There's been a lot of discussion surrounding DCI judging over the past couple of years, and a lot of questions as to how some of these decisions are made. And in an activity that can be very subjective, it can be hard to come up with a system that accurately measures creativity and excellence with numbers and score sheets. But DCI has been around for over 50 years, and over that time, they've come up with a system that selects a winner each year. But a lot of people don't know exactly how this system works and what specifically determines these numbers. So let's talk about DCI judging. The first ever judging system was created by the founder of the Blue Devils, Alfred Blue, back in 1938, and only allowed Blue Devils alumni to be judges in order to... Just kidding. Okay, so how does this system actually work? Every year, representatives from each corps will come together to revise and refine the rules. Propositions will be presented and then eventually put to a vote and determined by those collective representatives from each corps. An example of this was in 2018 when they successfully voted to add a second music analysis judge to finals, and that still exists today. And there are a lot of other rule changes that have happened over the past couple of years that don't specifically apply to the judging system, like changing the max number of members per corps or allowing other instruments like string instruments or brass instruments to be on the field. But in general, the system is not perfect, and the DCI community knows this, and it's constantly being updated and amended to better fit the evolving activity. So what does the current DCI scoring system look like today? The DCI scoring system is broken up into three main captions that add up to a total of 100 points: general effect, music, and visual. The visual and music captions are allotted 30 points each, and the general effect caption is allotted the other 40 points. Within the general effect caption, there are two subcaptions, general effect 1 and general effect 2, each allotted 20 points. We'll get deeper into what that means later. The visual caption is split into three subcaptions, analysis, proficiency, and color guard, each giving a score out of 20 points, which is then divided in half before being added to the total 100 points. And finally, the music caption, which is also split into three subcaptions of analysis, brass, and percussion. Within all these subcaptions is yet another subsection. Each judge actually delivers two scores that are added up to make their total individual caption score. For most of the captions, these two subsections are called content and achievement, but for general effect, it's called repertoire and performers. Now, the typical judging panel for any show is usually 8 judges, 2 for general effect, 3 for music, and 3 for visual. But for big shows like regionals and finals, there's what we call a double panel. This adds 2 more judges to the general effect caption and an additional music analysis judge. The allotments of the points are still the same, but it's just divided between each extra judge in those captions. So now that we know how all the numbers add up, let's talk about what these judges actually look for when they assign their scores. The visual proficiency's judge's job is to adjudicate the more technical aspects of the visual package. For the content side of the score, it's a measurement of the overall demand and the simultaneous responsibilities of an individual or a small group. This can include changes of meter or tempo, equipment responsibilities, range and expression of body movement, and overall physical demand. The achievement side of things has to do with precision and demonstration of technique from a clarity, timing, and articulation standpoint. This can also take into account the overall environmental challenges such as the listening environment and the concentration and stamina needed over time. But generally, we give this caption the nickname of feat because it has a lot to do with the technique of a corps and the uniformity from member to member. The brass judge is another judge that's down on the field right on the front sideline, and their job is pretty simple. They evaluate the brass section. For the content subcaption, the brass judge is evaluating the difficulty of the brass book from a technical and stylistic perspective, and this can include the depth of musical vocabulary, the simultaneous physical responsibilities, and the environmental listening challenges on the field. The achievement part of the score has a lot to do with the individual sampling of performers throughout the show. I remember when I was marching, there was an added level of pressure when that judge would come walking right in front of your horn as you were playing that hardest part of your book. Because they're listening to the quality of your tone, the pitch accuracy and intonation, the rhythmic precision, the balance and blend, stylistic expressiveness, and the uniformity of the people surrounding you. But for the most part, the brass's judge is all about the brass's execution and precision, and that can be pretty objective. The percussion judge is pretty much the same thing for the brass, except it's for the percussion. It's a measurement of the entire percussion section as a whole, and it's important to remember that this includes both the drumline and the front ensemble. I personally wish there were 2 judges in this caption to judge each of those sections individually, but for now there's only 1 judge that evaluates both of them. I think this caption can actually be pretty controversial because it can seem very objective. You can watch drumline videos on YouTube and see them in the lot and make your own evaluation as to how clean or dirty that drumline is and give your own score based on that. But there's a couple obvious problems with this. Number 1, drumlines don't sound the same in the lot as they do on the field. That's just the truth. I mean, a lot of them get really close, but there's a lot of visual demand that adds to the scores. And the second more important thing is that this completely cuts the front ensemble out of the equation. I gotta give a shout out to anyone who is watching this that is in the front ensemble, because I think you guys don't get enough credit and it should be part of the discussion a little bit more when we're talking about these percussion scores. But anyways, another thing I think that is important to remember is that the difficulty of a percussion section's music has a lot to do with more than just the notes. It has a lot to do with staging, which is essentially where the drumline is in relation to the field and to the pit. And this can create a lot of more demand in terms of a front to back timing perspective that makes it harder to play together. But overall, the percussion caption is pretty straightforward and it can be pretty relatively objective. There's one color guard judge whose job is to solely evaluate the proficiency of the color guard. I personally think it would be pretty cool to also have a color guard analysis judge who sits up in the box and then a color guard proficiency judge who's on the field, but for now there's only one judge. But for the content part of the color guard score, it's pretty similar to the visual proficiency caption. It's a measurement of the demand of the form and the use of the body and equipment. It also takes into account the enhancement of the musical structure through the timing and design of the guard work. On the achievement side of things, this covers the technique and expressivity of the performers, as well as the precision and accuracy of the equipment choreography. It's easy to generalize this caption into who has the craziest tosses and which color guard drops the least, but there's a lot of nuance that goes into this color guard score. Or at least I'm pretty sure based on what I've read. I'm not a color guard person, so correct me if I'm wrong. Now, there are 2 analysis judges, one in the music caption and one in the visual caption, but they essentially judge based on the same criteria. What these analysis judges do is they analyze how the pieces of the puzzle fit together in the larger picture. They focus on the orchestration of these visual and musical aspects and how they fit together to make the production. In basic terms, a visual proficiency judge will look at how a member marches across the field and the technique of their legs and the foot timing, and the visual analysis judge will look at how that member fits in the larger picture of the drill and the form. Same thing goes for music. A brass judge will listen to an individual performer and see how they're performing and executing their music, and the music analysis judge will listen to the entire section as a whole. The analysis captions are basically an evaluation of the entire overall composition and range of vocabulary of the entire ensemble. Okay, and now we have general effect, which obviously is the most controversial caption of all, because it's the most subjective, and it carries the most weight in terms of the score. So the task of the general effect caption is to essentially evaluate how effective an overall production is from an artistic, creative, and engaging standpoint. And this is broken down into 2 subcaptions of repertoire and performers. The repertoire part of the score is geared more towards the design of the show. Things like coordination of the music with the visuals, the interpretation of the music stylistically, and the overall originality and creativity of the design as a whole. The performer part of the score has to do with how these performers embody and deliver the message and the character of the production. It's a measurement of the commitment of the performers to the role or identity that they are portraying. It measures the performer's ability to engage with the audience and communicate the smallest details and nuance of the show. Now, there are 2 subcaptions within the general effect caption that are labeled General Effect 1 and General Effect 2. And usually, each of these judges will have either a music or a visual background. But the judging criteria is exactly the same for both these captions because they're just supposed to be evaluating the entire show as a whole. And they just want 2 judges from different backgrounds to give their perspectives on it. So the general effect caption is obviously the most controversial because it's such a subjective thing to decide what's the most effective show. But it's important to remember that general effect doesn't just have to do with which group gets the most applause or which one is the crowd favorite. General effect has a lot to do with the development and pace and shape of a show. It's a measurement of the strength of how compelling a show is down to all the smallest details and nuance that the average audience member might not catch. The general effect judge's job is to notice all these small details and nuance and determine if they speak together as a unified voice. So that's just a really basic breakdown of the judging criteria that all these judges look at when they decide these scores. Is the judging system perfect? No, it's not, and I don't think anyone really believes that. But when so many people jump to the conclusion that it's rigged or that these judges are biased, I don't think they're looking at the full picture of how these scores actually work. Each one of these judges are tasked with a very specific job, and they only play a really small part in the total score. And I personally trust the integrity and judgment of these adjudicators and educators that have been in this activity for so long. Have I disagreed with scores before? Yes, absolutely. My point is that I think it's easy to look at the final total score and jump to conclusions. But I think if you really take the time to look at these scores individually and understand the job that each judge is specifically required to do, then it makes a lot more sense. Or maybe you have more knowledge about drum corps than an entire collective panel of experienced judges. But that's just my take. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's more of just an educational video about the DCI system and all this information you can find on dci.org yourself. So check it out and let me know what you guys think. And what are you guys' thoughts about the DCI judging system? Do you guys think, it's broken? Do you guys think that it's biased? Whatever you guys have to say, leave it in the comments. I read the comments. But yeah, thanks for taking a watch and see you in the next video.